This is The Competitive Edge with Chris Bailey. Welcome to The Competitive Edge. My name is Scott Britton, and I'm here to help you answer a question that we all have. How can I get an edge in my business and life? Each week, we're going to uncover how some of the most successful and inspiring entrepreneurs, entertainers, and thought leaders get an edge so you too can reach your full potential. Thanks for tuning in today. Now let's get started. How can I become more productive? This is a question I think we've all asked ourselves at one time or another. I know I certainly have. Today we have Chris Bailey on the show to talk about what he's learned after spending a year of conducting personal productivity experiments on himself. Chris and I share the belief that this is an important topic because if we're more productive, we can spend the most amount of time doing the things that we enjoy while still accomplishing enough for our lives to have maximum impact. Whether you're looking to get more done in your workday or simply want to spend more times with loved ones, I think you're really going to like the thoughts from this conversation. And, this is more than just about getting things done in the workday. It's really about living a balanced, happy, and accomplished life and where productivity factors into that equation. So without further ado, let's go ahead and hear from Chris Bailey. Chris, what is up, dude?
Hey, brother. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. Excited to have you on here today.
Oh, excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Chris, I think something we are all trying to be in our lives to one degree or another is more productive. Why don't you just real quick give a story, a little origin story, if you will, of the year of productivity?
Yeah, sure. How much time do you have?
Let's make it bite-sized, man, because I want to get into the meaty tactics.
All right, here's like a little nugget. Essentially, I graduated last May with a business degree. And when I got out the door, I received a couple of these full-time job offers because, I'd worked hard up to that point. But I decided, if there was a time where I should say, screw it and follow my passion for a little bit, it was then. And like some people are obsessed with sports and some people are obsessed with like interesting things, but I'm obsessed with with what like a lot of people consider to be a very boring topic. It's exciting to me, and I like to try to approach it from weird angles and to try to make it exciting. But I'm obsessed with productivity. Getting as much out of your time as possible, getting as much energy as possible, focusing as much as you can on what you have to do in order to get more done over the course of the day. So last May, when I graduated, I decided to say, screw it, and decline those two jobs to start a project named A Year of Productivity, where I would, interview the most productive people I could find, run these kind of weird productivity experiments on myself, using myself as a guinea pig to explore the topic, and just, read as many books and academic articles as I could to just dive deep into the topic and share everything I learned on the website.
Awesome, man. And I guess, I'm curious, what was the outcome?
The outcome was, it was 1 million hits. I think, including all the stuff I wrote on other sites, it was 1,500,000 hits. Just, hundreds of thousands of people, kind of taking these lessons that I learned to make their own work lives better. And it was also this kind of deeper understanding of the process through which you get things done with, which is productivity. It seems kind of like a secular kind of project in a way because I'm researching how to get more done. But it just kind of changed my understanding of the topic. And, I think I kind of see work a lot differently now that I've done this thing.
Dude, absolutely. So I have so many questions for you.
Awesome.
So I guess, I'm trying to think about this. So the specific thing that you were trying to be more productive in was essentially codifying, researching, and understanding productivity.
Yeah, I see it as kind of like a real world MBA, where, I was just diving as deep into this topic as I could and researching it as much as I possibly could. At the end result, the things that I created were articles. I forget how many words I wrote over the course of the year. I think it's like 100,000 or 200,000 of just, pumping out the lessons that I learned over the course of the experiment. But that was ultimately the product that I created, was these articles about these kind of not brain droppings, but like but like the way I see the world kind of differently now that I've done all this research, plus that combined with the scientific aspect of it all.
Love it, man. And so just so we kind of like set the context for everybody listening, in
Yeah.
terms of your measurement of what was effective and what was not effective, it was really your ability to write these articles and all the marketing and all the things that really went into play in order to build out a year of productivity, the website property.
Yeah. My goal was just kind of to dive as deep as I could and just share everything I learned to help people out.
Got it. So I think I'm going to ask the question we're all dying to know, man. What is the 80/20? What are the main takeaways of how we can be more productive after spending a year on this? And I know you probably have a zillion, but let's just go over a few of the big ones and dive into those.
Okay, sure. Yeah, kind of the big one, it's a hard question because there's so many. One of the things I learned is that, there is no one secret to becoming more productive, but there are these kind of hundreds and maybe even thousands of things that you can do on a daily basis in order to get more done. But kind of the main kind of bigger picture, I guess, is that I think people have kind of a narrow view of productivity. When I started this project, I was obsessed with these, productivity apps, for example, managing everything I had to do and the whole getting things done system and all these, time management systems and techniques. And, those are powerful and those will help you get more done. But at the end of the day, those are only a piece of kind of the puzzle of what it takes to become more productive. And so kind of the main takeaway that I have right now is how productive you are on a daily basis is the confluence of three things. It's how you manage your time, it's how you manage your energy, and it's how you manage your focus and your attention. And where these three things overlap in the middle, the time, the energy, and the attention, where they overlap, that's how productive you are on a daily basis. So you absolutely need all three. Like if you can't manage your time, you might have all the energy in the world and you might be able to focus on what you're doing, but you're not going to work on the best tasks in the first place. If you don't have enough energy, you're going to be dragging your feet all day. And if you don't have enough attention or focus, you could potentially be managing your time well and have a lot of energy to bring to the task, but you're going to be on Facebook and on Twitter and playing Angry Birds or whatever the hell people play these days. What is it, like Monument Valley? That's a cool new game. If you haven't played it, you should check it out.
I have not played it, but I will add it onto the things that I should stay very far away from.
Yeah, no, you should do that. It's kind of like this puzzle game inspired by MC Escher. But this is kind of the point I'm trying. Like people get distracted easily. they get off point. They lose focus of the message that they're trying to get home at or the work that they're trying to do. And that affects productivity just as much as not being able to manage your time or your energy. So the big kind of thing that I took away from the project is that productivity is the combination of all three. It's time plus energy plus attention. And where they meet in the middle, that's how productive you are. So it was kind of that bigger picture. And on kind of a deeper level, so what I explored on a day-to-day basis while I researched and wrote all these articles was these tactics that I could use in each of these areas in order to get more done, basically.
Okay, awesome. So let's go ahead and say, how do we self-diagnose that we perhaps are not operating at an optimal level in one of those quadrants? So let's say, because honestly, a lot of us probably think that we're super productive, and then in reality, we might be less attentive than we actually should be, or we might not be operating at an optimal energy level.
Yeah, I think you kind of have to, that's the hard part, right? The hard part of anything is stepping back from your actions to kind of see the intentions behind them. Yeah, like I have this kind of viewpoint that intention behind your actions is kind of like wood behind an arrow. You absolutely need that intention before you do something. And so I think an important part is slowing down before you do something, because then you can actually, question if you're doing the right thing in the first place. Every morning, I have this habit of going on the computer after I wake up, when my pre-workout is kind of kicking in before like between when I wake up and when I go to the gym each morning, I go on the computer. But, it's easy to kind of go on autopilot then, when you just kind of kill time for half an hour while you wait to go to the gym. But what I've been doing over the course of the last few months is slowing down so I could actually think, okay, what do I want to do right now? Instead of going on autopilot and clicking on the same sequence of links, or some people have this problem where they lay in bed and they take their phone out and they bounce around between the same few apps every morning before they even get out of bed. So I think slowing down and questioning what you're doing in the first place is a killer way, and that's kind of a way to bring mindfulness to your actions every day, is to just slow down and ask yourself, okay, why the hell am I doing this? What's the point of checking analytics in my bed for 20 minutes every morning? Like, what am I actually getting out of this time? So that's another way that I think people can slow down and kind of question how they're spending their time and their energy and their attention. Another way is to simply log. Start by logging how you're spending your time. One of the things, I coached a few people on becoming more productive, and one of the things I have them do is keep a time log. And it's annoying as hell to keep a log of how you're spending all your time. But people who keep a food log eat a third less than everybody else because they question what they're eating in the first place. And that's true for a time log too. When you actually track how you're spending your time, you're going to spend a lot more time on higher leverage activities as opposed to just walking around the office for half an hour. Another thing in kind of the energy quadrant is tracking your energy levels over the course of a couple of weeks. And so this is something I encourage a lot of people to do too, is track your set an hourly chime on your phone, and every hour on the hour, track out of 10 how much energy you feel that you have and how much motivation you feel that you have. And then kind of over time you learn, and you learn to step back from your habits, and you think, okay, I drink a coffee every morning at 10 and every day I crash at about 1. What's going on here? Maybe the coffee is doing something. I think stepping back and kind of observing the intentions behind your actions is my favorite way to do it. And I can sit here and kind of dispense all the advice I want, but kind of the truth is it's really hard to do this. If it was easy to become more productive, everybody would be as fit as George Clooney and as successful as Warren Buffett. But the truth is, this stuff is pretty fucking hard. It's pretty, sorry for swearing. It's pretty hard to kind of put a marker in so you can
No, we're keeping it, dude. And by the way, I want to let you know, you have an awesome voice. You should totally start a podcast. Really? Oh, people say that. No, it's just a microphone. I have a good microphone and I like the sound of my own voice, so I like to ramble. And that's all that that's all that you're hearing. But sorry, go on. I've been talking for 10 minutes. Well, again, you have a great voice, so it's all good, man. But one of the things that I'm really glad that you brought attention to is just kind of the taking a step back element, because I've been pretty obsessed with productivity myself for a while, and that's a whole nother story. But what I realized ultimately was the most productive thing to do is to become great at prioritizing, right? Because we can operate at an incredibly high velocity of execution and getting things done. But if we're not doing things that are important to us, and we're not doing the most high leverage things, and not just in work stuff, but in our relationships and all of these things, it's all for naught. It's equivalent to starting a cross country road trip and just driving 95 and not necessarily charting out the fastest path, but just feeling really good that you're going 95 miles an hour. And I feel it's so easy, man, to just start doing stuff, start going on autopilot. But ultimately, the time in terms of planning and reflection to constantly make sure that we are calibrating our execution and the things that we're doing is probably the most high leverage thing that you can do, in my personal opinion. Oh, absolutely. It's what Brian Tracy says. I think he says, I forget the ratio exactly, but every 1 minute of planning is worth 10 minutes in execution, because you don't work on things that aren't high leverage, and you learn what the most intelligent path to get things done is. Taking that step back to actually plan what you're going to do
instead of actually just doing it is the right way to go. You're going to save yourself time. You're going to save yourself focus, and you're going to get more energy at the end of the day. You know, one of the folks I interviewed for A Year of Productivity, his name is Charles Duhigg, and he wrote a book named The Power of Habit. And he says that, you know, I don't know, this probably isn't his thing. Like, there's probably some research that some scientists have done on this, but 40% of everything we do is a habit. And so it's automatic. Like 40%, that's half of our life. And a lot of these habits are terrible, like watching 20 episodes of House of Cards with a bucket of Ben and Jerry's on the couch after work. Like,
House of
there's
Cards
some
is
habits.
so good.
It's a great and amazing show, let's be honest. But you don't need 20 episodes of it in one sitting. Actually, maybe you do. Maybe that's an exception. But like, but knowing why you're doing something in the first place, that's key. Because then you're not doing it just to do it. You're doing it because you want to do it. I don't want to sound like a motivational speaker or something, but that's kind of what I believe.
No, dude. I mean, this advice is so on point. Can you talk about like how you do your planning, prioritization, and why before you dive into the actual execution part? Because I think that's, I mean, this is so important for people to hear.
Yeah. What I personally do, and this is kind of one of those things that has evolved over time for me. I'm kind of one of those experimental kind of people, where I kind of throw a bunch of ideas at the wall and see what sticks. And what is stuck for me, and I forget where this idea comes from, is every morning I define the 3 outcomes I want to get out of that day. And so I basically, in my mind, I fast forward to the end of the day and I think, okay, if the day is over right now, what 3 things would I want to have accomplished? You know, and they could be big, they can be small, they can be whatever, because over time you learn kind of your limits and how much time, energy, and attention you actually have over the course of the day. But every morning, and I do that, like my morning routine, I love my morning routine.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Why don't you just describe this within the context of the entire routine?
Yeah, sure. So I wake up at 5:30 every morning. I go to bed at like 9:30. I get a full night's sleep. But I get up at 5:30 every morning. I take my pre-workout drink and some gym supplements, and then I hit the gym for 6. And I keep my phone in airplane mode from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. so that I have this kind of bubble of time where I could focus on prioritizing what's important as well as settling down before I go to bed for the night. And so when I wake up, when I go to the gym for 6, when I'm at the gym, I have this kind of bubble where I can focus in. And when I'm on the treadmill or the elliptical or the bike doing my cardio before I lift the weights that morning, I define the 3 outcomes that I want to get out of the day. So fast forwarding to the end of the day, what 3 things would I want to have accomplished? And I find 3 works really, really well. Like a lot of people have a to-do list where they just kind of they throw everything on there, right? But when you limit yourself to 3 things, and of course you can do a bunch of tiny things throughout the course of the day, but when you limit yourself to coming up with just 3 things to get done over the course of the day, you really force yourself to cut out what's not important and to think about, okay, like what is out of this list of this 100 things that I have to do, what's actually important here? What do I have to get done today? What's in it? What's a task that's like important but not urgent? What are the things that are urgent but not important that I have to get done? What is basically the essential 3 things that I have to get done today? What are the 3 outcomes that I have to produce? I'm repeating myself a lot, but it's an important point. Just defining it to be 3 things. 3 is a number I find works well because when you're done one of them, you have 2 to choose from. And then when you're done 3 at the end of the day, you feel like, yeah, I fucking rocked this this day. I was ultra productive. Stop me if I'm rambling. But like I define productivity as, achieving what you intended to achieve. And so if you intend to relax for the day and then you have a day of like wonderful relaxation, I think you were perfectly productive because you achieved what you wanted to achieve. And if you want to get those 3 things done and you intend to get those 3 things done over the course of the day, and then you do them, then you feel just so productive at the end of the day and that you're ready for the next day after that.
I wanted to ask you because, again, like defining those 3 things, incredibly important. But if those 3 things aren't the right 3 things, that's a huge problem. And so like my 3 things could be like check email, like respond to Facebook message fast. Like, and that's great. But, you know, I wanted to go a level deeper there and ask, like, if you had any ways to define, like kind of almost like categorically, your prioritization framework for those three things. And I'm happy to share mine, but I'd love to hear yours.
Yeah, let's go to yours in a sec. But like, what I kind of think is, you know, if I could only get three things done today, what would they have to be? You know, what are the three things that I absolutely want to get done? And not only things that like I have to get done, and there's no like structured framework around this. It's kind of like, you know, I mentioned fast forwarding to the end of the day. You know, what three things, if it's the end of the day, what three things would I be proud of accomplishing because I'd kind of lived a day of my life? You know, what three things would I want to be different in the world because I spent 8 hours doing my work? That's kind of how it's not like a structured framework, but I'm curious to know how you do it.
Yeah, sure. So in my, at least within the context of business, I basically write out all the things I can do. And then I have, like 4 categories, right? So one of them is just a dollar sign, and that's like what makes me the most money. The other one is what is the most high leverage. So for example, this podcast does not make me any money at the moment, but I think this is an incredibly high leverage, awesome activity that I love doing because I'm getting to connect with amazing people. So that would be an example of what would fall in this. What is urgent? So an example would be, okay, I have to get back to my friend about a specific email that he sent me. And then all the other stuff is maybe someday. And when I go ahead and start off my day, I look at all of these 3 boxes, and I basically am like, okay, well, you know, all of this stuff is important, the high leverage, the money, the urgency, but what do I want to focus on at this point in time? And that allows me to kind of like feel like I'm consistently at least performing tasks in the buckets that are important to me and my business. So that's how I do it.
Cool. Yeah, I think everybody has kind of 7 areas, like these 3 resources, time, energy, and attention, into over the course of the day. Like there's your mind, there's your body, there's your emotions, there's your career, there's finances, there's relationships, and there's having fun. And, you know, within the course or the boundaries of a week, you know, you kind of invest your time, your energy, and your attention into these 7 kind of hotspots is what I've heard them called. And so I kind of have like a weekly planning session in addition to the daily planning session. And, you know, the naming 3 things is kind of an exercise to figure out what's important to you. But what I also do is I have a list, and it's like this kind of like point form list of these 7 things, but like under each of these things, I have it expanded. So for example, under my body hotspot, there would be things like eating and nutrition and exercise and sleeping and like stress and health and medical, like stuff like that. And so I just kind of skim this list once a week to figure out what the things that I need to do are. And that kind of helps me make sure that nothing slips through the cracks, and also make sure that I'm not kind of underinvesting in some areas and overinvesting in other areas. Because like out of these hotspots, there's some people who make kind of the same mistakes again and again and again, right? Like there's people who spend 70 hours of career every week, but they spend like 5 hours on their relationships. And what helps me, at least, and again, what works for me might not work for you, but is to kind of see my life as a portfolio that is comprised of these 7 things: mind, body, emotions, career, finances, relationships, and fun. And since it's a portfolio, like investment 101, you should have a diversified portfolio, because like, what if your career goes down the shitter one day? You know, if you don't invest in your mind, your body, your emotions, your relationships, what do you have left if you overinvest in that one area and don't invest as much in the other? And, you know, I agree that sometimes you have to live in kind of an unbalanced way. Like if you want to get it ahead in your career, you might have to throw more time and energy and attention in that hotspot, into the elements under that hotspot, instead of, you know, working to build up your relationships or having fun. But at the same time, you have to kind of see these things as a portfolio so that you live in a balanced way. But sorry, I ran again. That's
No worries, man. I think it's really important. Like the way that I think of that, I do the same thing. I perform a 2-week analysis of like 8 areas of my life using a tool called the Wheel of Life. Just to kind of check in. And actually another benefit of what you just mentioned is this idea of ego diversification, right? If you put your self-worth into how you're performing in your career, and that's the only thing that you value yourself in, or maybe a contrasting example would be like your relationship with your girlfriend or something. And that goes to the shitter, all of a sudden you feel like crap about yourself. Yeah. But if you are putting time and energy into all these different areas of your life and you're anchoring yourself to positive momentum in each area of your life, if you're spinning a bunch of plates and each plate is a different part of your life that's important to you, and one of those drops for a moment, you still can feel great about yourself, which at the end of the day, I think really productivity, what we really want at a more even meta level is just to feel good as long as we can.
Yeah. That's what people want. Like, people just want to be happy. That's what people kind of strive for at the end of the day. Like the way I kind of, one of my favorite models of happiness is from Martin Seligman. You might have heard of this, but he says that how happy something makes you can be attributed to 3 factors. How much pleasure it gives you, how engaged you are with it, and how much meaning it adds to your life. And usually you don't find all 3 in one hotspot in one of these 7 spots, right? Like you need to kind of spread yourself over multiple hotspots.
Yeah, totally. I'm really glad that intention is in your model, because, and I wanted to kind of dive into the relationships part of this whole framework, because I think a lot of people like are super productive, and when they're in an interaction with somebody, at least I used to be like this when I was like trying to get a zillion things done and like super focused on like career advancement stuff, is like you're in an interaction and you're thinking about what you need to do next, and you're thinking about like, oh my God, like this is wasting my time. I need to get back to my computer to do XYZ, instead of like being in the moment. And I'm just curious, like as somebody who's very, very productive, who has tried a bunch of things, like how you taper this ambitious, productive urge with your love and connection, your relationships, these interactions that at times might seem like challenging to be in the moment.
Yeah, if you can't be in the moment in your relationships, like I'm sorry, you're not going to be in the moment when you're doing work either. Like that's kind of a mindset. That's kind of not a mindset, but that's kind of a way you see the world that isn't dependent on context. That translates to every single context. If you live mindlessly when you're in your relationships, you're going to be mindless when you're working too. You're going to make more mistakes. And no matter how productive you feel, you're not going to be productive. If you kind of had a video camera and you taped yourself working and you saw yourself when you're not kind of working, you would see yourself totally different, if that makes sense. Like people are absolutely essential in productivity. And I say that, one of the experiments that I did for a year of productivity was to live in total isolation for 10 days. I didn't talk to any people. I didn't communicate with anybody. I like wrote one handwritten letter every day to my girlfriend, but that was all that I allowed myself to communicate with people with. Besides that, I was totally cut off from people and sunlight. But what I found through this experiment, and I think this is true for most people, and I hate generalizing the things that I learned because I kind of see my experiments through my lens, and that's not translatable across everybody. It's, a lot of these lessons are translatable across most people, or generalizable. It's probably a better word. But like most of the benchmarks that I use to measure how productive I am involve people. Like how happy I have the chance to make other people, the difference that I get to make. And, when you kind of take people out of the equation, like you're not going to be able to accomplish much, or what you accomplish isn't going to mean a hell of a lot, because then when you've accomplished it, you're going to look around and you're going to be alone. You absolutely need people. You need relationships. They energize you. They fuel you. And that's kind of the energy part of that kind of model that I have: the time, the energy, the attention. There are hardly, there are a few things that might be more or just as motivating as people, but there isn't much. Like, it's like getting enough sleep, exercising, eating well, spending time with people, and maybe like meditating. So people are absolutely essential, and they matter more than a lot of people think. The way I kind of see productivity, I kind of take this holistic kind of view where I see it as, as a series of interconnected components, where it's characterized by the different parts, time, energy, and attention, and you absolutely need all three. There's a point that was like on the tip of my tongue that I was leading up to making, but I let it slip and I forgot what it was, but I'll let you know. I'll let you know what it was. But like, people are so important, a lot more than a lot of people consider them to be. Oh, I know what I was going to say.
Let's hear it.
A lot of people kind of equate productivity with efficiency, and they see them as, the same thing. But I don't think anything could be more different. Productivity isn't about how much you produce or how much you can get done in how little time. It's all about how much you accomplish. If you accomplish a ton, you're productive, especially when what you accomplish is what you intended to accomplish in the first place. That's the point I was going to try to make.
Yeah, I really like that, man, because you're so right in terms of the equation of productivity and efficiency. And I just have found in my own life, as I become more balanced, that like, if you're just focusing on efficiency, it takes away from the human life experience and like all the
and there's less richness to what you do.
Yes. When
you're trying to get more done in less time, like, it's less meaningful. Like, you end up like hating yourself. Like, the most efficient person on the planet isn't a person, it's a computer, and computers have no personality. And then on the other hand, there's the people who are least efficient are like the Buddhist monks who take 2 hours to drink a cup of tea because they're drinking it so mindfully. Like, you don't want to be a computer. And most people don't really want to become a Buddhist monk because it's hard to make a living when it takes you 2 hours to drink a cup of tea. Like, you have to kind of find that middle ground that's right for you. But I don't think being a computer is where it's at.
Totally, dude. I mean, that's not where we're happy. That's not where we have like the laughter and the richness that you described. So I'm super happy that you brought this up. Let's say that somebody's listening to this right now and they're just generally not that productive of a person. And we can define that as they're not getting the things that they're done, or they're not accomplishing what they want to. What would be like the first set of things that you would tell them to do?
I'm going to take on like a mom kind of role right now. But like when I coach folks, the biggest mistakes that people tend to make is they don't get enough sleep, they don't exercise, and they don't eat well. Like, you can have a million apps on your phone that'll manage everything that you have to do. And, maybe some of those will be right for you. But if you don't get enough sleep, your productivity is going to be toast for the week. If you don't exercise, if exercise came in a pill form, every single person on the planet would pay like $10 a day for it. Well, a lot of people don't have $10 a day, but like most people in North America would pay $10 a day to have this magical exercise pill that gave you all the same benefits.
Trim spa, baby.
Eating. What's that?
Trim spa, baby.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I mean, I'm just thinking of all of these diet solutions. Like, don't go to the gym, take this pill.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, you should probably go to the gym.
I agree.
and eat well. But, energy is kind of the fuel that you burn throughout the day in order to become more productive. So I would start there. And that's a great place to start. It's hard to kind of get to the bottom of these other places. And, of course it's possible. And of course there are ways to do it. But, when you're not sure how efficient you are in managing your time, it's hard to get more efficient at managing your time. And, it's that kind of part of the learning process. Like, there's times when you're learning stuff where you know enough stuff to know that you know stuff, but you don't know what you don't know, if that kind of makes sense. And so it's hard to kind of step back from where you are to kind of observe what you need to change. But, I'd start by tracking your time, looking at how much energy you have and making adjustments there, as well as looking at how well you can focus. One of the most productive things that people can do is to take more breaks. Because when you take breaks, it's not like you stop working. Your mind still processes what you were working on, but in the background, while you re-energize and while you regain your focus and while you make sure you don't burn out. And so, doing these things to make sure that you nurture your energy levels at all times, as well as, regain your focus by taking breaks, are really great ways to start, I feel.
Sounds like you.
It's hard though. It's really hard. A lot of people kind of sit on their pedestal and they pretend like they know everything about what it takes to become more productive. But those people are usually bullshitting you. It's hard to become more productive. It's hard because when you want to become more productive, what you really want to do is change your life. It's hard to change your life because you are the way you are right now because of a bunch of things that happened in your past, and you have to put a lot of willpower into changing who you are. So that's the hard part about becoming more productive. But those are some good places I feel that are beneficial to start at.
Totally, man. I mean, physiology is everything, right? And I think it sounds like you might have read The Power of Full Engagement by Tony Schwartz.
Yeah, incredible book. I read it several years ago, though, so it's kind of there's some residue there, but I'm not sure what the residue is.
Yeah, just the idea that the real currency of life is energy. And at least in my own personal experience, whether I'm at my computer or I'm at a dinner party or I'm working out, when I feel best is when I have the most energy. And ultimately, we're all just trying to feel good throughout the longest part of our day that we can. And the best way to nurture that is to take care of your nutrition, take care of your sleep, take care of your energy. And ultimately, a big part of that is intermittent recovery, which you alluded to.
Yeah. Take more breaks, gain that support network, make more friends at the office, even office friendships have been shown to increase your job satisfaction by 50% and make you, I saw one study, and it's kind of hard to believe, but there's other studies that kind of back it up, that make you 7 times more engaged in your work. It's these things that kind of seem low leverage on the surface, like taking breaks or making more friends at the office, or seeking out things you're grateful for. Even is an incredible way. Doing that, it trains your brain to look at the world and look for the positives in things. Because a lot of the times, in our job, we train our brains to look for the negatives, to fix the problems that might come up. And so when we go home, we look for the negatives there too, and we're not that happy. But when you look for the things that you're great, when you every day define 3 things that you're grateful for, or recall 3 things that you're grateful for over the course of that day, you train your brain in the opposite direction, and you end up being happier, which has been shown to work wonders on your productivity. Or even journaling one great experience you had over the course of the day, or letting your air out of the tires letting some air out of your tires every once in a while. One of my experiments was to be a total slob for a week, where I ordered takeout every day, didn't get off the couch, and I tried to work within these conditions to try to be as productive as possible. And it's important. Maybe don't be a slob for a week, but let some air out of the tires every once in a while, and just be kind to yourself. 80% of the thoughts in your head are negative. When you talk to yourself, 80% of self-talk is negative. I can't do this. I shouldn't do this. I won't be able to do this. Just taking some time and being kind to yourself and showing yourself some self-love is important.
What are specific ways that you do that?
Well, there are several there's several kind of stress relief strategies that actually work. There are some kind of outlets that people have for their stress that they use sometimes, like shopping and gambling and spending money, all these different things. But there are other stress relief strategies that have actually been shown to release the amount of stress, hormones or stress, whatever it is. They release the amount of chemical stress in your body, whatever the equivalent of that is. And some of them, like exercising. There's exercising again. It's coming up again. Exercising, reading, listening to music, spending time with friends and family. There's that one again. going for a massage, going for a nature walk, getting some fresh air, meditating. There's meditation again. These strategies actually work to release the amount of stress chemicals in your body, which will help you over the course of the rest of the day.
Do you have like some specific protocol where you say, okay, this week I'm going to do 3 things for myself, or I'm going to make sure I do 1 thing for myself, or take a break every day?
What I do is I scan that kind of list of expanded hotspots. So like I have kind of a Word document where I have all these things listed, like mind, body, emotions, career, finances, relationships, and fun. I talk about it so much I know it off by heart. It's kind of sad. Actually, it's kind of nice to know that off by heart. But I have all these kind of expanded in a Pages document on my computer, and so I scan that once a week to identify the threats and the opportunities in each of these areas. Think about what I need to do that week. Think about what I can improve on. Think about where I'm overinvesting my time or underinvesting my time. What areas I'm kind of lacking in. So that's what I do once a week just to make sure I'm balanced. But I forget your original question. Does that answer it?
Sure.
Okay.
I know a lot of people are listening to this right now, and they might have attempted at one point in their lives to make time for reflection and journaling and all of these things, but they never actually ended up making that a consistent habit. What would your advice be to these people?
Reward yourself afterwards. One of the best ways to solidify a new habit is to, when I interviewed Charles for the habit article that I wrote, one of the things he recommended was, if you want to work out, you should eat chocolate after you work out, just a little piece of chocolate, because it solidifies that cue, routine, reward sequence in your brain where, you have a cue that's presented to you like a certain time of the day. Like, okay, it's 6 a.m. I should go to the gym. You have the routine, which is going to the gym. Then you have the reward. But sometimes the rewards of these habits are kind of vague, and they're not incredibly apparent. Like journaling, there's not really many rewards you get. It's not like after you journal something, somebody hands you $100. But if you journal something and after every journal you kind of present yourself with a reward that you find genuinely rewarding, I think that really helps. And that's kind of the origin behind why you should eat chocolate after you work out. It's solidifying that cue, routine, reward sequence in your brain. A habit is just a bunch of synapses that fire in your brain. It's a neurological pathway that fires in your brain every time you're presented with a cue. Okay, I just woke up, so that's my cue to pick up my phone and automatically check these 10 apps to figure out what's new with my life. And, so rewarding is a great, rewarding yourself for doing these new habits is an incredible way to kind of do that. Let's see. Rewarding yourself, that's a good way. That would kind of be my biggest recommendation.
One question I have for you is, you've spent a year focusing on productivity, really learning the subject and applying it within your own life. What's become more important to you after this giant experiment?
Like in terms of the parts of productivity?
In terms of your life, man, like how has your worldview shifted?
That's an interesting question. I think doing more meaningful work is important. When I started the project, I kind of said, okay, this is something I'm passionate about, and I have 12 grand in the bank account. That's enough to live off of for a year. I'm going to do this project. Just kind of that was my motivation. I realized that I could do it, so I did it. But I've worked a bunch of kind of co-op internships and other kind of shitty jobs over the course of my university career, where I can see where I am right now, doing what I love every day and kind of exploring this topic and interviewing such cool people and talking to cool people like you. And I look at where I was before doing this like shitty, meaningless work where I wasn't really getting much out of every day. And, so what's kind of changed, I don't know if it has much to do with productivity, but just about doing meaningful work. Seeking out things that have those kind of 3 characteristics that Martin Seligman talks about. They should be pleasurable and they should be engaging. Well, a lot of jobs are pleasurable and engaging, but what they aren't is meaningful. And so that's something that I kind of actively seek out now in terms of the things that I do to make money. And I think that's kind of key. That's kind of become key over the course of the year. It doesn't have much to do with, maybe it does have stuff to do with something to do with productivity, but that's kind of what's changed in the way I kind of live right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was having a conversation recently, and it might have actually been with Jerry Colonna, who was the last podcast episode I just released. And he said that the biggest focus hack is passion, which is often, when we're doing something meaningful to ourselves and to others. Yeah. And it's so true. Like, when you don't have a compelling why about whatever you're particularly doing, it just becomes much harder and less enjoyable to do.
Yeah, it's like, what's the point? Why would I do that? Why would I put the extra, energy and focus into what I'm doing when there's no point? But when you kind of have that meaning, that deeper level, that passion, that sense of why you're doing what you're doing, then it's a lot easier to channel, not only your time into what you're doing. Time's the easy part. Anybody can spend time on things, but, managing your attention to focus on what you have to do, or managing your energy to expend it over the course of doing what you have to do, that's the hard part. And that's kind of where the biggest room for gains are in productivity. And I think that's why passion's so important. Yeah,
totally.
I totally agree with whoever your guest was.
What is there a particular productivity myth that sticks out where you went ahead and tried something and at the end of it you're like, okay, this is total BS?
Yeah. Oh, the biggest piece of bullshit that everybody writes about is waking up early. Waking up early it's been shown to have no socioeconomic difference in your life. There's no sorry, I can't talk right now, but there's no difference in socioeconomic standing between people who wake up earlier and people who wake up later. And, they both get the same amount of hours to do their work in over the course of the day. Where the difference is how they manage their time and their energy and their focus after they get up. And so, I happen to wake up early, as I've mentioned. It's kind of like a cool thing to show off. Like, I wake up at 5:30 every morning, but really it doesn't really make a difference at the end of the day.
Let me ask you this. How do you feel about the argument that waking up early and making sure that we go to bed when the sun goes down and wake up when the sun comes up is in alignment with our circadian rhythms, and when we contradict that, we're actually going to be operating at a lower energy level state?
Well, there's something to be said for that, and I'm not a neuro circadian rhythm kind of psychologist.
Don't worry, I'm just regurgitating something I've read.
Yeah, well, most of what I say is just things other people say. No, that's not true. Some of it's my own stuff. But what was the question?
So,
sorry.
I've heard the argument, and I am a early to wake, early to bed type of dude.
Yeah.
Except when I'm in Vegas, which I am right now. And the argument is that, our bodies and minds have been conditioned for tens of thousands of years because of the hormones produced when the sun goes down and comes up to basically rise early, go to bed early. And there's something huge to be said for that. Like, when I lived in isolation for 10 days, not only did I not have access to people or communicate with people, but I also didn't feel any sunlight over the course of that experiment. And that completely threw off my sleep. It just totally, messed up my energy levels. Like, I was awake, like I could not go to sleep, and it was like 3 a.m. because my cycle was so thrown off. I got maybe 5 minutes every day of sunlight exposure, and that was it. My body didn't know when it was day and when it was night. And there's something to be said for that. And if you go to sleep at 3 a.m. and wake up at 1 p.m., you're gonna be messed up. Your internal clock isn't gonna know what hit it. But if you kind of stick to normal working hours, kind of around sunrise and sunset. I don't know everything about this, so I'm not gonna speak as if I know what I'm talking about. But from what I understand, as long as you're relatively close to sunrise and sunset, and you're not waking up at 2 p.m. or going to sleep at 4 a.m., I think there isn't much of a difference. But again, probably you're going to receive 20 emails about, this guy is totally wrong. Hopefully not, man. Hopefully not. So I was like,
but this is what I think I read, kind of thing.
Totally, man. And again, as you alluded to earlier, like it's all about determining what's best for you. There's no one size fits all magic bullet solution, whether we're talking about diet or increasing productivity or what time we should wake up. It's about calibrating with your environment in your life and ultimately seeing what makes you happiest.
Like do both. See where you have the most energy. If you have more energy waking up at 9 a.m. instead of 5 a.m., then wake up at 9 a.m. because that's where you feel the most energy. There's something to be said about just not listening to this generic kind of blanket advice and figuring out what works the best for you.
Totally, man. And you know what? I'm really glad you brought up this earlier in the interview when you mentioned like talking about energy and how you might want to sit there and every hour track what energy level you're operating at.
Yeah.
Like, that's a pain in the ass. But in order to figure out what's best for us in our own lives, we need to bring awareness to all of these different things so that we can make good decisions. And the process of bringing awareness is often a pain in the ass. But
oh, absolutely, yeah.
But like that is truthfully the only way we can reach the level that we're going to be our best is, by taking these theories, hypotheses, and testing them against our own lives and seeing what works best.
Yeah. Oh, I couldn't agree more.
Chris, so I always like to finish this with this one question that integrates the name of the show.
Okay.
If you had one piece of advice for everyone listening to get an edge in their business and life, what would that be? And it can be something that we've already talked about, or maybe it can be some piece of information that you think is really important that we didn't necessarily have a chance to touch upon.
Oh man, that's a tough one.
I mean, I've read your 100 productivity tips list, and I know you have a lot. So there's
a lot on there.
Figuring that out on its own is a challenge in itself.
Yeah, like there's a reason I didn't make like one productivity secret. There's like a list of 100 because there is kind of no secret. But one thing that somebody can do to get an edge is one of my favorite things to do with folks to help them out in becoming more productive is to have them make a list of all the activities they do in their work over the course of a typical month. And I would encourage folks to make a list of all the things that you do over the course of a month and think, if I could only do one of these activities all day long, all month, what activity would I pick? And then ask yourself that again, if I can only do two activities, the second one in addition to the first one, what would the second activity be? And do that same thing for a third one. And these three activities are where you deliver most of your value in your work. This is where you make most of your money. This is where you make the most people happy. These are where you deliver most of your value. Usually in most corporations, I forget where this kind of idea comes from, but you're paid for achieving specific and measurable outcomes. And there are very few activities that you do that contribute to this value. And so when you really kind of focus on pushing yourself to just kind of do what's inevitable and essential, chances are for most people, checking email won't be in that list of three things that are your highest leverage activities. But maybe something like writing is, or maybe something like calling up clients is, or maybe you have other activities in your work. So that's something I would encourage folks to do, because there are very, very few activities that you do, maybe 3, maybe 4, where you contribute 80 to 90% of the value in your work. And I would encourage folks to actively think about that, because, it's good to be able to manage your time and your energy and your attention better, but you really have to be working on the right things in the first place, the things that'll add the most value to your work and push you the furthest, propel you the furthest. And that's my favorite way to figure out what those tasks are that'll do that.
Chris, that is awesome advice, man. So if people want more information on you, if they want to continue to stay up to date with these really cool experiments that you're doing in the realm of productivity, where's the best place for them to keep you in touch?
Yeah, so my year-long project is ayearofproductivity.com. Pretty simple. And you can hop on there. There's like a nice video that we made. I did a TEDx talk a while back that's linked to on there. And, I was lucky to team up with the same folks that filmed the TEDx talk to make a video about a year of productivity, kind of talking about the major things that I learned. So the video's on there, the link to the TED Talk's on there, a link to the 100 Things article that you mentioned is on there, a link to also an article about, the top 10 things that I learned over the course of the years on there too. And, on the surface, these titles sound kind of like link baity and kind of like clickbait, like, oh, the top 10 things. Right. But, I spent a lot of time into, kind of shoehorning the ideas that I benefited from the most into a format that's pretty accessible to most people. And so, every piece of feedback I heard is, these articles are great. So check those out. ayearofproductivity.com is where the articles that I wrote over the course of the year is on. And I also just started, because the year's over now, I started a life of productivity where I'm going to keep on writing and experimenting and exploring. And that'll be at alifeofproductivity.com.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Chris. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having me. I hope people find that valuable.
Before we finish up with today's Mindshare, I just want to say thanks for listening to another episode of The Competitive Edge. If you enjoyed the ideas in this episode and want access to all the conversations, tactics, and mind shares we'll be sharing in the future, the best thing you can do is subscribe to The Competitive Edge on iTunes. And while you're there, if you felt like this show has made a positive impact on your day, it'd be great if you could leave us a review on iTunes as well. Now, I know we covered a lot in this episode, and there might be a few key ideas or tools that you want to remember. So we went ahead and compiled all of the notes, links, and even a full searchable transcript of this conversation for you on lifelonglearner.com. That's life-longlearner.com. I also want to give you the details on a cool contest I'm running right now at lifelonglearner.com/fun. By entering the contest, you'll have a chance to win everything from Amazon gift cards to a free month of having your very own dedicated virtual assistant to an opportunity to come and hang out with me and my buds for a few days, where we'll teach you how to create your very own passive income stream. To enter this contest and learn more about everything we're giving away, head on over to lifelonglearner.com/fun. Alrighty, super interesting interview with Chris. I definitely got to thinking about a lot of different things in my life and ways I've been trying to be more productive. And I think one of the things that I wanted to talk about was just my approach to learning things, because I think there's a zillion things that we want to learn out there, right? And how can we use our time in the best way possible to decide what we should actually spend time learning or getting better at? And one of the mindsets that I use is what I call a scalable approach to learning. And this is basically determining what things, if you learn this particular thing, are going to be the most pervasive across all areas of your life. So an example of that is when I decided to become more efficient at particular tasks. The first two things that I focused on were, okay, what do I spend the most time doing throughout my week? And the answer to those was sleep and email. Honestly, I think 27% of our work week is typically spent on email. So I really decided to build amazing habits around those two things. And I now actually sleep 8 hours for just energy reasons, but there was a time where I was able to get my sleep down from 7.5 hours a night to less than 6 hours a night and still operate at a decent level, just by building all these various habits and learning about them and testing them. And the same with email, like taking that 27% of time and minimizing that to like the minimal effective dose of email. So, I think like when we think about what we can learn, like you can learn very specific skills if they're going to push you forward in your business life or work life. But one approach is like, what can I learn that is going to have a positive effect across multiple things or all things that I do? And another example of this is copywriting, right? When I wanted to become a better marketer, I could get very specific and decide to learn Facebook advertising or paid search or blogging or conversion optimization or all of these things. But across all of those things, one thing that is very important is to be able to write effective, compelling copy that pushes people to take the action that you want them to take. So if I focused on learning copywriting and understanding the psychology and human behavior of marketing, which is a critical element, it would be much easier for me to be effective across Facebook marketing, paid search, blogging, all of these particular things just by learning that one skill. So this has just been kind of a little productivity hack that I've used in terms of how I think about what I should learn, what I should focus on. It's just the mindset of, is this an incredibly specialized skill, or is this one that's going to be scalable across multiple parts of my life so that this investment is really just a big win? So just something to think about as you decide what you should spend your time learning. And I look forward to talking more about this on another episode of The Competitive Edge coming up soon. If I focused on learning copywriting and understanding the psychology and human behavior of marketing, which is a critical element, it would be much easier for me to be effective across Facebook marketing, paid search, blogging, all of these particular things just by learning that one skill. So this has just been kind of a little productivity hack that I've used in terms of how I think about what I should learn, what I should focus on. It's just the mindset of, is this an incredibly specialized skill, or is this one that's going to be scalable across multiple parts of my life so that this investment is really just a big win? So just something to think about as you decide what you should spend your time learning. And I look forward to talking more about this on another episode of The Competitive Edge coming up soon.